Welcome to Mini Scandals, the series where we pull up an ice cold popcorn and some freshly popped soda and explore the dramas that grip the world's fandoms. Today we're cracking some packs, tapping some lands, and desperately trying to ignore the fact that our opponent smells like roast beef as we dive into the spell-slinging world of Magic the Gathering. Cardboard crack, wizard poker, or solitaire for the sexually impaired. Magic the Gathering is a cultural phenomenon that has long since taken the world by storm. First released in 1993, Magic the Gathering was the world's first trading card game, combining the fun of trading pictures of girls' boobies that you found under your older brother's bed with a game of tactics, all dipped in a delicious coat of fantasy goodness. As we saw in my World of Warcraft video, people who foregoed bathing in order to memorize the origins of the dwarves aren't known for their high charisma rolls, and so a series of salacious scandals was inevitable. Don't get me wrong, I love Magic and the amazing community around it. But how could I not talk about the world of Magic might be full of evil dragons, demons, and a series of monsters that want to steal your skeleton in a variety of fun ways. But in real life, becoming a villain just requires you to cheat at a children's card game. Our first story revolves around Alex Bertonicini, an infamous Magic player who had previously found some success on the tournament scene, nabbing the Star City Games Player of the Year award in 2010. Cheating in Magic comes in many forms, such as the cool sleight of hand David Blaine magician style, where you used advanced card wizardry to make cards appear where you want them to and not where you don't, and the lame, boring loser way of just fucking lying. Alex is a patron of the latter. The accusations levelled against him read like the sort of rookie mistakes a new player would make, from drawing an extra card in his opening hand to casting spells he shouldn't be able to. Not only is Alex willing to cheat, but he's even willing to cheat while being recorded, which either means he was born 1 mana short of a brainstorm, or that he cheats so frequently that he forgets when he's meant to stop. I'll try and keep this simple, but in this example, Alex has a creature, Kira, Great Glass Spinner, that his opponent kills. It goes to his graveyard, but luckily for Alex, he has a second one in his hand, so he plays it again. His opponent really doesn't want him to have another, so again, he kills the second Kira. Now watch what happens here. Instead of placing it in his graveyard like he's supposed to, he motions as though he's moving the card toward the graveyard, but instead whips it back into his hand. Because there's a Kira clearly visible on his graveyard, it's assumed to be the second one. So when he plays the Kira he slipped into his hand, everyone just assumes that he had a third. Even the commentators seem confused for a second before deciding that they must be the ones who are mistaken and moving on.
Is that another Kira? Wow.
That is a...
No, oh, it is another one.
Yeah, that's his third. He only has 2, right?
This cheat was ultimately fruitless, as Alex ended up losing a couple turns later anyway, but it was just another example of Alex's willingness to take advantage of his opponent's trust in order to give himself whatever edge he could. Alex received his first 18-month ban from the game in December of 2011, and while we don't know which specific incident led to this banning, with the mountain of evidence available, it's hardly surprising. So a Magic player gets banned for cheating. Big whoop. Does the Pope neglect decades of pedophilia? Of course, what sets Alex apart is his chronic inability to stop cheating. You might think that, after being literally banned for cheating, when you eventually make your triumphant return, it might be pertinent to, not cheat anymore. Like a Saturday morning cartoon villain, Alex sauntered back onto the scene in 2013, only to be banned again in 2014. This second banning was supposedly due to the acclamation of multiple game rule violations, which are mistakes during play that don't necessarily denote cheating, as they could just as easily come from a lack of skill. Of course, to quote an article written by his ex-best friend, "I have never seen Alex make a mistake that doesn't favour him." It's possible that the judges responsible for Alex's second ban simply couldn't prove that he was actively cheating and not just being a sloppy player, which is likely why he only received a 3-year ban as opposed to a lifetime one. Once he was unbanned in 2017, Alex slithered his slimy self back onto the competitive scene, even making the top 8 of the Grand Prix tournament in LA. At this point, Alex was reviled amongst the Magic community for not only making a mockery of the game, but for somehow skirting a lifetime ban each time, and his name was apparently booed during his top 8 announcement. Despite having to learn the hard way, Alex has since cleaned his act up and attempted to make amends by teaching judges and other Magic staff how best to catch a cheater in action. Just kidding, he was caught cheating multiple times and received a lifetime ban in 2019. What about?
It's time.
Alright gentlemen, I know we're all very excited to participate in today's card tournament, but I just got word from upstairs that we gotta watch this edutainment video first, so eyes up here, not on your cards, huh?
You might have noticed that your body is going through some changes. This is a process called puberty.
The Magic Grand Prix.
Hair will start to grow in weird places. The best way to combat this is with a little bit of help from our friends over at Manscaped.
Hi Magic players. My name is Pete U. Blover, and I'm here to show you how the Manscaped Perfect Package 4.0 is the perfect solution to all of your pesky pubic problems. First up, we have the Lawnmower 4.0. This little baby can help deal with all sorts of nasty leg, chest, and beard hairs. Featuring revolutionary no-neck technology. Sorry, man. And a fully waterproof design. The Lawnmower 4.0 comes with a handy LED built in, so you can squeeze in a quick shave in the alleyway out the back of your main girl's parents' house. Not only does Manscaped help keep your pubonic plague under control, they keep your pits and bits feeling fresh with their anti-chafing, crop preserver and crop reviver. Really guys, come on. Go to manscaped.com today and get 20% off plus free international shipping and 2 free gifts when you use code Many Kudos at checkout.
Okay, I'm not sure why that turned into an advertisement, but hey, let's play some cards, huh? How about some Texas Hold'em? Goldfish? Huh? What do you guys want to play? I don't know how these work.
A tournament disqualification, or DQ, is one of the harshest penalties you can enact on a player, second only to insistence that, no really, you should be wearing deodorant when you leave the house, and as such are only reserved for the most extreme cases of obvious cheating or otherwise abnormal behaviour. Here are some of my favourite examples of some of the wacky ways that people manage to get themselves a one-way ticket to Dairy Queen. Olivier Ruel, Grand Prix Brisbane, 2007. His opponent showed up wearing a pair of highly reflective sunglasses that he had hanging from his shirt, allowing Olivier to see his cards in the reflection. The year prior, Olivier had received another disqualification and was somewhat on edge. So when he was confronted by a judge, he lied and said that he couldn't see his opponent's cards. The irony here is that, in the end, the judges determined that it wasn't actually Olivier's fault. It was his opponent's for showing up wearing clothing that could potentially reveal his hand. And yet, Olivier was disqualified anyway, for choosing to lie to the judge in the first place. Tomoharu Saito, Grand Prix Kobe, 2001. Saito found himself in the middle of a losing game, and instead of trying to play his way out of it, went for the ultimate Hail Mary. He asked his opponent to cut his deck. Now I know my accent makes that sound like some kind of Pain Olympics type beat, but cutting a deck of cards simply involves picking an arbitrary point within the deck to pick up a fraction of the deck and place it on top. In tournament play, your opponent is meant to do this every time your deck is shuffled, to ensure that the people capable of actual magic can't use some advanced card engineering to guarantee that all their best cards float to the top of their deck. Saito, seemingly for no reason, offered his opponent to cut his deck out of the blue, and his opponent, bewildered by this request, did it regardless, only for Saito to call over a judge and say that his opponent was trying to tamper with his deck. Of course, this was one of the stupidest ways to try and pin an illegal move on your opponent, and Saito was quickly caught out, before being disqualified and hit with an 18-month ban. Mark Justice, Grand Prix Atlanta, 1997. Mark was part of a draft where he pulled 3 muscle slivers from packs, but he wanted 4. When it came time to write down the deck list, he wrote that he had drafted 4, and during the downtime before the first match, went over to one of the card vendors and purchased a 4th muscle sliver. And he would have got away with it too, if it weren't for those meddling printer inconsistencies. You see, the card he'd purchased from the vendor was from a different print run to the 3 he had drafted, and the colouring was noticeably different. After spotting this, the judges went full CSI. Once it was discovered he had purchased the card, he said it was because one of the ones he pulled from the packs was defective and he had already thrown it out. When asked which trash can he had thrown it into, he had a convenient lapse in his memory, and so the judges gave him an ultimatum. You help us search all 4 trash cans in the building, and if we find the muscle sliver you threw away, you can stay. Otherwise, you're exiled. Mark, unwilling to spend an afternoon trawling through trash for a card he knew didn't exist, declined the offer and was promptly disqualified. Finally, Trey Van Cleve, Grand Prix Boston 2003. In addition to some unsportsmanlike behaviour and shady plays, Trey found himself with a 2-year suspension, all thanks to the official event photographer, and the picture humorously titled Van Cleve covets Zeev's YMG shirt. It's clear that the only thing Van Cleve covets is a fat fucking W, as he can be seen clearly peeking at the cards another player is drafting. Have you ever been done in by a technicality? A ruling or law that, while you understand the intent behind it, seems frankly ludicrous given the context? I'm sure Bradley Carpenter felt this way when he lost a match in the semi-finals of the Star City Games Charlotte Open tournament, simply because he didn't say a card's full name. Because the deck lists were posted before the game, Bradley knew that his opponent, Bob Huang, had a 12-gauge shotgun of a card called Borborygmos Enraged that Carpenter definitely didn't want to look down the receiving end of. Thankfully, Carpenter had a card up his sleeve, or rather in his deck, because a card up his sleeve would be in clear violation of Rule 108.5. This card was Pithing Needle, a card that allows you to pick a card, any card, and that card is essentially unable to activate its abilities. When Carpenter played Pithing Needle, he named Borborygmos as the card he wanted to target, not Borborygmos Enraged, assuming Huang would know what he meant. This probably wouldn't have been a problem if there wasn't also a card named just Borborygmos. Now, Borborygmos is a useless card that would never see any real tournament play, unlike the version of him that checks Twitter daily, Borborygmos Enraged. And even though Huang didn't have any of the unenraged version in his deck, Pithing Needle doesn't care. Carpenter named a real card, so that card is now its target. When Huang finally flopped out his meaty Borborygmos Enraged onto the table, Carpenter's pitiful pithing prick could do nothing to stop it, and he ultimately lost the game. While most people sided with Huang, he did later regret abusing this technicality to win the game. I asked the judges away from the table to verify that he had named the Guild Pact version. They said he did, and I came back unsure of what to do. Ultimately, I gave in to my desire to win. But in retrospect, I think that while winning is important to me, it was not worth doing in a questionable way. Despite Carpenter's loss, the players had chosen to split their earnings beforehand, so neither one of them lost out financially. Furthermore, the official rules of Magic were updated, so that should there be any confusion about which particular card a player is naming, they must seek further clarification so that both players know exactly which card they mean. Carpenter might have taken an L on a technicality, but what about... Now, with a title like that, I'm sure your first thoughts are something along the lines of match fixing or illegal betting, but I assure you the reality is much sillier. One of the most popular Magic formats is Draft, where a group of players all crack open a number of packs, take one card and pass the rest to the next player, do the hokey pokey and turn it all around, and continue in this fashion until they have enough cards that will hopefully create a solid deck. The setting? Las Vegas's 2015 Grand Prix Pro Tournament. The player? Pascal Maynard. My pants? Shitted. Maynard was doing pretty well for himself so far and landed a spot in the top 8 players of the tournament. These 8 players sat down for the final draft of the tournament, with the winner receiving an invitation to the Magic World Championship, which is essentially the Super Bowl for people who don't know what the Super Bowl is. It's during this draft that Maynard cracks open a pack containing a foil Tarmogoyf.
Oh my god.
At the time, this beefcake of a card was easily selling for a couple $100 for a single non-foil version, with this shiny coating only adding even more value to an already rare card. In addition to this, drafted cards at tournaments are stamped by the organisers so that players can't Alex Bertonicini a couple cards up their sleeves and slot them in as needed. This meant that this already incredibly rare shiny Tarmogoyf is now literally one of a kind, and Maynard found himself with a dilemma on his hands. While there's no rules against choosing a card for its value alone, it's generally frowned upon in the community to nab the rare and expensive cards in a draft if they don't fit the deck you're trying to build. Unfortunately for Maynard, another card in this pack would have worked far better with the cards he'd chosen thus far, meaning everyone watching along at home would know that money was the only reason he might choose the Tarmogoyf. He chose the Tarmogoyf. This spawned a mass debate amongst Magic fans and professionals, with many casual players in favour of Maynard copping some extra cardboard cash, while several famous pro players felt that this actively cheapened the game. Others still argue that if Wizards of the Coast had provided their professionals better monetary support, they wouldn't be so inclined to yoink the pricey cards. Either way, the deed was done, and while Maynard didn't end up winning the tournament, he did announce that he would be donating 75% of the card's proceeds to charity. In addition to its uniqueness as a tournament-stamped foil Tarmogoyf, the infamy surrounding it only further drove up the price, and in the end, it sold for just over $2,000 via private auction. After more mini scandals, you can choose between one about 90s Pokemon cards, or how about one on World of Warcraft scandals? There were so many Magic stories I couldn't get to in this video. What ones would you like to see if I did a part 2?